Most people judge pizza by what they see on top: the cheese pull, the pepperoni, the bright red sauce, the glossy layer of oil, and the toppings piled on just enough to make the whole pizza look loaded. But with fast food pizza, the real engineering is usually hiding underneath. The crust decides whether that slice folds, crunches, stays soft, fills you up, survives delivery, or turns sad and floppy inside the box. It can be thin and snappy, thick and bready, crisp and buttery on the bottom, or packed with melted cheese around the edge. So today, we are not starting with the toppings. We are starting with the part most people barely think about, even though it controls almost everything: the crust. Pizza crust follows one simple rule: tiny changes can create a completely different bite. It starts with basic ingredients: flour, water, yeast, oil, sugar, and heat. But each one has a job. More water can make the dough softer, lighter, and airier. Less water can make it firmer, drier, and easier to crisp. Yeast creates gas bubbles, which give the crust lift, chew, and that warm bread smell when it comes out of the oven. Oil makes the dough feel richer and helps the surface brown more deeply. Sugar can speed up color and bring out that slightly toasted flavor people associate with fast food crust. Then heat decides the final personality. High heat can puff the crust quickly. A pan can make the bottom crunchier. Steam trapped inside keeps the middle soft. So crust is not just bread sitting under toppings. It is controlled texture. Thin crust looks simple, but it is actually one of the easiest crusts to mess up. Its whole appeal is that quick snap when you bite in, the dry edge, the light base, and the feeling that the pizza is not too heavy. But because the crust is so thin, it has almost no room for error. Too much sauce can soak into it. Too much cheese can trap steam on top and soften it from above. Too many toppings can bend the slice before it even reaches your mouth. That is why thin crust works best when everything stays controlled. The sauce, cheese, and toppings have to support the crust instead of crushing it. When it works, you get speed, crunch, and a lighter bite. But the magic fades quickly once moisture takes over. The classic hand-tossed crust is the safe middle ground, and that is exactly why pizza chains love it. It is not as fragile as thin crust, not as heavy as pan crust, and not as intense as stuffed crust. It gives you a soft bite, a little chew, a raised edge, and enough structure to carry sauce, cheese, and toppings without falling apart. For fast food pizza, that balance matters more than people think. The dough needs to be easy to portion, easy to stretch, easy to bake consistently, and strong enough to handle delivery without losing its whole personality. It may not be the most exciting crust on the menu, but that is kind of the point. Classic crust is designed to please the most people with the least risk. Pan crust is where pizza starts to feel almost fried, even though it still comes out of an oven. The secret is the oil sitting underneath the dough. When the metal pan heats up, that oil transfers heat straight into the bottom of the crust, creating a golden, crisp layer that feels richer than a dry baked base. At the same time, steam inside the dough keeps the middle soft, thick, and warm. That contrast is what makes pan crust so craveable: crunchy underneath, fluffy inside, buttery around the edges, and heavier in a way that feels comforting. It is also why pan crust fills you up faster than a thin slice. You are not just eating bread with toppings. You are eating dough, oil, heat, steam, and browning, all working together in one bite. Stuffed crust is one of the smartest tricks in fast food pizza, because it takes the part people often leave behind and turns it into the selling point. Normally, the edge is just extra bread. Some people eat it, some people ignore it, and some people leave a pile of crusts in the box. But once melted cheese is hidden inside that edge, the crust becomes something people wait for. The bite changes completely. You get soft dough on the outside, salty cheese inside, a little stretch, a little fat, and a reason to keep eating all the way to the end. It is not just about adding more cheese. It is about changing how you see the pizza. Suddenly, the border is not leftover crust anymore. It is part of the reward. Delivery crust has a harder job than most people realize, because the pizza is not really finished when it leaves the oven. It still has to survive the box. As soon as a hot pizza is closed inside cardboard, steam starts moving through the crust. The cheese keeps releasing heat, the sauce brings moisture, and the toppings can drip oil down into the surface. That is where things can go wrong fast. If the crust is too thin, it softens and bends. If it is too thick, it can feel heavy, dry, and tired by the time it gets to you. So fast food delivery crust is usually built for endurance. It needs enough structure to hold the slice together, enough chew to still feel pleasant after cooling, and enough thickness to fight off sogginess. The real test is not the first minute out of the oven. It is the first bite on your couch. Frozen pizza crust is designed for a very strange second life. It is not just baked once and eaten fresh. It has to be made, cooled, frozen, shipped, stored, and then brought back in your oven at home. That means the crust needs enough structure to survive ice crystals, temperature swings, and a second round of heat without turning into cardboard or collapsing under the sauce. Many frozen crusts are partly baked first, so they can firm up before freezing. But the real challenge is moisture. Too much moisture, and the crust turns soft, gummy, and sad. Too little, and it tastes dry, flat, and lifeless. So frozen pizza crust is not really trying to be restaurant pizza. It is engineered to come back to life after being paused. Restaurant crust, chain crust, and frozen crust are not chasing the same goal. A restaurant crust is usually built for the best possible moment, hot from the oven, eaten quickly, with the texture at its peak. A chain crust has a different job. It has to be consistent, fast, affordable, and strong enough to handle delivery, busy kitchens, repeat orders, and people expecting the same bite every time. Frozen crust has the hardest comeback story of all. It has to sit in a freezer, survive storage, and then crisp up later in a home oven that may not be nearly as powerful as a restaurant oven. So when one crust tastes lighter, another feels sturdier, and another seems a little more processed. That is not random. Each one is built for a different environment. The question is not only which crust tastes best, it is what problem that crust was designed to solve. Here is the hidden truth in fast food pizza. Crust is one of the easiest ways to make the whole pizza feel more valuable. Dough is cheaper than premium toppings, but it controls size, weight, fullness, texture, and the way the pizza feels in your hands. A thicker crust makes the pizza feel like more food. A pan crust makes basic dough taste richer because of the oil, heat, and browning. A stuffed crust turns the edge into a reason to keep eating. Even delivery crust adds value by holding the slice together after the ride, instead of letting the whole thing fall apart before you open the box. So crust is not just the part underneath the pizza. It is where chains turn flour, oil, heat, and cheese into the feeling of getting more. So the smarter way to choose pizza crust is not to ask which one is best. Ask what kind of bite you actually want. If you want something lighter, quicker, and easier to eat, thin crust makes sense. If you want crunch, oil, and comfort, pan crust is doing exactly that job. If you want a treat, stuffed crust is built to feel like one. If you want to feel full faster, a thicker crust will get you there. Pizza does not need to be scary, and crust does not need to be overanalyzed every time you order. But once you understand how crust works, you can see what you are really paying for: texture, convenience, fullness, or sometimes just very clever marketing.